Good evening. My name is Louis Montgomery. I am the chapter historian for the Kappa Phi Lambda chapter here in Howard County, Maryland. It is my great pleasure to introduce and interview our general historian, Brother Robert Harris, Jr. Brother Harris, how are you this evening?
Oh, I'm fine.
Good, good, excellent. Well, so glad to have an opportunity to interview you for our oral history project. Brother Harris, tell us where you're from originally and where you went to college.
Well, I'm from the great city of Chicago, Illinois. I went to Roosevelt University as an undergraduate, where I was a history major, and I might share the story with you. My daughters, they tell me that very few people knew what they wanted to be when they were in sixth grade. But I have an essay that I shared with them where I wrote in sixth grade that I wanted to become a history teacher. Of course, I was not thinking at that time about teaching in college, looking at the opportunities that were available at that time. And I'm the first member of my immediate family to graduate from college. So for me to become a high school history teacher was an achievable goal, something that I could accomplish. And I'm going to speed forward just a little bit. I got my master's degree with honors from Roosevelt University. And while working in the master's degree program, I had a faculty member there ask me if I had thought about going on for a PhD degree. Well, getting the bachelor's degree was quite an accomplishment within my family. So I had not thought about PhD. And then I didn't, I mean, I had role models for getting a bachelor's degree and even for going on and getting a master's degree. But I didn't have any role models I can think of for the PhD degree. I mean, I later met individuals who had PhD degrees, but I thought, well, let me apply. And the faculty member who asked me about this suggested some schools I might apply to. And as they say, the rest is history. But within my family, my youngest sister, she said, "You're still going to school? I thought you graduated." She thought I was in a remedial program,
That's funny.
that I had not really finished college because I was still, I mean, they thought after the bachelor's degree that was it.
No, that's a great story. That's great. So ultimately, where'd you get your PhD from?
I got my PhD degree from Northwestern University, and I've got another little bit of a story to tell you here. Got my bachelor's degree from Roosevelt, master's degree from Roosevelt, went a little north to Evanston, Illinois, and got my PhD degree, then left from Evanston, Illinois, and went a little bit south to Champaign-Urbana, where I had my first appointment. But I did make a little bit of a detour after I got the master's degree, where I thought that I pretty much had the history under control, knew everything I needed to know. And so I went, and then also this was 1968 when I got my master's degree. And there was a ad in our student newspaper said, "Come teach a brother." And with the assassination of Dr. King, I was really, well, as many of us were sort of frustrated. We kind of given up. And I decided, it said, "Come teach a brother." And so that's what I wanted to do. And I went to Miles College in Birmingham, Alabama. Of course, while I was at Miles College, I discovered I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. And also having just a master's degree, I found that I was low man on the totem pole. And I like to say that I'm a quick learner. I saw that the individuals who had the doctoral degrees had more say over what courses they were going to teach, when they were going to teach. So I got to go get a PhD degree.
Good for you. Good for you. So tell us how you became interested and ultimately a member of our beloved fraternity.
Well, I've always considered myself to be an intellectual, still do. I have a niece, and she was telling me once. She said you can always. She graduated. She got her bachelor's degree from Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi, and she said, you can always tell the alphas on campus. I said, how's that? She said they're the ones carrying a book.
Nice.
And so that has basically been my interest. I found that the alphas were more, what should I say, compatible when I went to their smoker, their informational session. It was a different atmosphere than the informational sessions I went to for the other fraternities. I had been invited to each of the what we call smokers at that time, but there was a different tone for the alpha smoker, and so that really attracted me to join the fraternity. Now, let me also give you a little context here. In the 60s, this would have been 69, that I became a Sphinxman, but I had the big afro. And
I remember those. I had one too.
Some of my line brothers who they said they were taking bets. They said, we don't think he's coming back. He's not gonna join us because I had to cut my hair off. And because I was the fraternity to the men of Alpha, those greats like W.E.B. Du Bois, John Hope Franklin, and I mean, these are all prominent intellectuals, historians, said, maybe there's something here for me. And I decided to join.
That's great. So in which chapter did you join the fraternity, and what year did you initially cross?
Okay, I went over April 27, 1963 at Theta chapter in Chicago.
Okay, great. One of the original 20. Fantastic.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah. And tell us about your experience as a college brother. I understand that there were a number of roles that you held rather while as a college brother.
Well, the members of Theta chapter, I think, recognized some things in me that maybe I didn't see myself. They elected me president of the chapter, and I later became assistant Midwestern vice president. And there I was exposed to some of the giants of Alpha Phi Alpha, because we have, assistant, what we call AVPs, and they serve on the board. They have vote, they have voice, they have vote, just like every other member of the board. And so there I was. I had voice, I had vote. I also watched individuals like Lionel Newsom, who was president of the fraternity at the time, Judge Billy Jones, who was Midwestern vice president. And I kind of held these men in awe, not so much so that I lost my voice. I mean, I would speak up in the meetings, but one of the things I share with young brothers today is that, I observed quite a bit, and there were things that I learned. Many of the brothers on the board were lawyers, and we had a document that was passed out to us, and Brother Newsom said, I want you to peruse this document. Now, I was a sophomore in college at the time, but I had not heard of the word peruse. So that
Okay.
was something that I learned there serving on the board. And also, I'll share a story with you. Um, Judge Sidney Jones Jr., who was a very prominent lawyer, became a judge in Chicago and executive director of the fraternity. But I remember having a conversation with him, and I had conversations with other brothers because being from Chicago, you've got politics in your bloodstream.
Sure.
And I was thinking about maybe pursuing a political career, but they let me know that you can't make a living in politics. Many of them, and that's one of the reasons why you have many individuals who are lawyers and they're in politics because they can make a living.
Sure.
But a high school teacher, I couldn't make a living and pursue politics. Or even as a university professor, I couldn't really make a living and pursue politics. And one of the things that I was always interested in, I got married during my junior year of college.
Okay.
So soon after that, our oldest daughter came along, and I began to think about how can I support my family. And so that's why I went on further, got the PhD degree. And when I got the PhD degree, let me just share this little vignette with you. I was appointed as an instructor at the University of Illinois.
Okay.
I was making $11,500 a year. They told me, soon as you, because I went there and I tell young students today that you can't follow the same trajectory that I followed.
Sure.
Because at the time that I came out, you could get a job with having maybe half of your dissertation written. Now you've got to have the whole dissertation written. In fact, you've got to have a book accepted for publication at many institutions. But I'd written half of the dissertation. They saw the promise in it, I guess. But they told me, once you finish, once the university says that you don't have to have received the degree, but once they say you've completed all the requirements for the degree, you will become an assistant professor and you get a $500 increase. Well, I wasn't worried so much about the title, but that $500 meant a whole lot.
Sure.
In 1972, I think it was, that I developed, I try to explain again this to students, I developed what you call tunnel vision. I focused on one thing and one thing only. I would teach my classes during the day. I'd go home, I'd have a little dinner. I'd go to the library. I'd stay in the library almost until it closed. One good thing, given that I was, again, you know, I'm young member of the faculty. I get a study in the library, but they give me a study in the basement of the library. Well, I didn't see that as discrimination or anything. In fact, it was a blessing to me because I didn't know whether it was light or dark outside.
You would stay there all hours.
Working, and during the first semester there, I finished the dissertation, got that $500 increase in salary.
Great for you. That's a really great story. So you've got your PhD, and I know that ultimately you ended up at Cornell. So how did you navigate from University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana ultimately to Ithaca, New York?
Well, okay, you know, at the time, this would have been about 1972, 73. I was, well, let me say this. there were a lot of people who dismissed Black studies.
Mm.
They said that the courses were nothing more than rap sessions,
Mm.
that there was no intellectual substance to Black studies. Now, as a historian, I knew, for example, that W.E.B. Du Bois at the turn of the century started the Atlanta University Studies, where each year his plan was that each year for 10 years, they would study a particular issue, the Black family,
Mm-hmm.
Black religion, and then
Mm-hmm.
they come back to it. And so they would study this in 10-year cycles. Now, to me, that was a body of knowledge that we had that we
Mm-hmm.
could build upon. Whereas in these institutions, Big Ten, Ivy League, um, they had no sense, they had no appreciation
Mm.
for this body of knowledge that we had that we could draw upon. You could not, and now W.E.B. Du Bois has been recognized as the father of sociology in this
Mm-hmm.
country
Yep.
because of the studies that he conducted. The Philadelphia Negro is seen as a model of sociological study, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They had no appreciation for that. I knew about it. There were others who knew about it because we had studied
Sure.
these areas. Now, some of them we had to study on our own, but they said that there was nothing to, and I was determined we're going to prove them wrong. We're going to show them. We're going to show them that there is as much intellectual substance and quality to Black studies as to any other field of study. And so I was disappointed at the University of Illinois. Like many other, I mean, University of Illinois wasn't alone. There were other institutions that also did not value Black studies. And, you know, this is something new, something different. And
Mm-hmm.
then also, to me, it suggested that we weren't capable,
Mm.
okay, of doing quality work, research and writing. And so I said, I'm going to prove them wrong. Position opened up at Cornell. Now I applied for the position, and here I had to kind of hold my cards close to the vest, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
because you know the heritage, Cornell, the Seven Jewels,
Mm-hmm.
Alpha Phi Alpha. All they had to say was come, and I was going to go. But I did play a little difficult to get, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Cornell had started, I think, one of the strongest, um, well, they call it Africana Studies, one of the strongest Africana Studies programs in the country. The only one that could rival it, I would say, and of course, it was held out as the model, the program at Yale,
Mm.
but the program at Yale was not run completely by its Black faculty.
Mm.
This has also been a problem. You know, it, they had some sense, and I'm just going to say this, that the Negroes, if you give them a department, they're going to tear it up.
Mm. Got it.
They're going to fight among themselves. We don't have to worry about it. But we showed them, James Turner started a quality program at
Mm-hmm.
Cornell. He brought in, I would say, quality faculty. I'd like
Mm-hmm.
to think that I was one of those. And we were serious about what we were doing. In fact, sometimes students thought we were a little too serious because I'd have students come in and say, "Oh, brother man, you know, this is too much." You know, the students sometimes thought that they could get over on us.
Mm.
In fact, I had a student, this wasn't at Cornell, this was at the University of Illinois, where I had a Black student, young man, tell me that he couldn't get as excited about my course as the white students in the course, because after all, he had lived the Black experience.
Okay.
I said, young man, you don't know the half of it.
Sure.
You
That's
know?
that's
So,
great. That's great. We,
these were issues that we had to deal with, but all they had to do basically was put an offer on the table. And given the history of the fraternity at Cornell, I was ready to go.
that's fantastic. So tell me about you mentioned Cornell and Alpha chapter. Tell me about your involvement with Alpha chapter over the years while at Cornell.
Well, when I started out, maybe about the time when you were there, I was in the process of establishing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to establish myself academically.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't much time. I mean, I would encounter the Brothers of Alpha chapter, but there wasn't as much time that I could devote to Alpha chapter as I was able to later, once I
Sure.
became a professor with tenure. Until I got tenure, I mean, again, I mean, I got a family to support.
Sure.
We've got 2 children now, and I've got to look at how I'm going to support them. So I always, try to do as much as I could with the Brothers of Alpha chapter. Although I must say I did become somewhat disappointed because I did not believe in physical hazing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a case. In fact, the young man, I don't know if you all are related because his last name was Montgomery too,
Hmm.
who pledged
No.
Alpha chapter. And at that time, they had individuals who would come in. There's a line, they know these young men about to be initiated. And outsiders thought that, well, if you're going to become a member of Alpha chapter, you've got to be made right, as they called it, whatever the heck that means. And let me just go back here for a moment. The second president of the fraternity, Dr. Roscoe C. Giles,
Mm-hmm.
was my personal physician in Chicago.
Oh my gosh.
So you couldn't tell me about Alpha tradition.
That's amazing.
And some of them want to tell me, oh, well, what we're doing is just tradition. No, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know anything about tradition. Oh, they didn't want to hear that,
Mm-hmm.
of course. But I became more involved, I think, after this particular incident where, of course, the fraternity was sued. I think this case cost us about $500,000.
Oh boy.
And the university was sued. And then, of course, that made the university a little bit shy. Their risk management people said, we can't have this because if anything goes on, people want to come after the deep pockets. The deep pockets were not the fraternity or its members. The deep pockets was the university.
Sure.
So they tried to come after the university. They did not succeed, but the university began to tighten up, especially on Alpha chapter. And so, as I say, I was not able to give as much attention. And then I always felt that members of the fraternity should excel in the class.
Sure.
And so I expected a little bit more of members of the fraternity than other
Certainly.
people. And so there were members of the fraternity who tried to avoid my classes.
Okay, because they thought you're going to be especially hard on them.
Yes,
Okay.
and I was.
Yeah.
Okay. I admit it. You're an alpha man. I expect more of you.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense. Now, you mentioned early on that as a sixth grader, you knew you wanted to be a history teacher and historian. How did you ultimately become the general historian for the fraternity?
Okay, that's a little bit of a long story, but to make it short, um, after Dr. Charles H. Wesley passed, the fraternity did not have, well, there were a couple of individuals, let's say, who were appointed as the general historian for the fraternity. One of them, he basically, I mean, he knew from his involvement in the fraternity much of the history of the fraternity, but he was basically a person in um, theater arts. I don't know why his name is escaping me for the moment, but uh, um, they launched a national search.
Okay.
They appointed a committee to search for a general historian. Um, and so now, why am I again? I'm dropping the general president's name, who appointed me as general. But anyway, my name surfaced,
Okay, sure.
and I think that I had an advantage given that I was at Cornell.
Sure.
But also at that time, I'd been very active in the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, been active in other historical organizations. For example, the largest historical organization in the country is the American Historical Society, no, the American Historical Association. And I've been active in that organization. So I had a little bit, without being boastful, of a reputation out there. I'd served as president of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History that was organized in 1915.
Oh,
still exists today. I just came back from what was it, the 107th annual meeting
that's
of
incredible.
this is Carter G. Woodson's organization. Now, Carter G. Woodson, God bless his soul, was an Omega, but I didn't hold that against the organization.
Sure.
Because Alphas played key roles. Charles Wesley was a very prominent member of the organization. Rayford W. Logan was a very prominent member. John Hope Franklin, prominent member of the organization. So there were a number of alphas who were involved. In fact, over half of the males who have served as president of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History have been alphas, and the current president is an alpha. So we've played prominent roles, although sometimes the Omegas want to give us a hard time, but we say that's okay. We say Carter G. Woodson was the second African American to get a PhD degree from Harvard, but the first African American was W.E.B. Du Bois.
Right.
And the third African American was Charles H. Wesley. And the fourth African American was Rayford Logan. So,
so we got 3 of the 4 were alphas.
That's right. Of the first 4. Yeah, to get their PhD degrees in history from Harvard University.
That's incredible. How does one go? Obviously, I'm an amateur historian. You're a professional historian. I'm the historian for the chapter.
Because I got paid for the work that I did.
Okay, but you published. You've published quite a lot. How does one go about following a legendary brother of Brother Wesley to write the second volume of history of the chapter? It's just got to be such a daunting task.
Well, yes, when I was asked to become the general historian, that was something I had to wrestle with. And I decided that I would try to follow along the lines that Dr. Wesley had set out in writing the history of the fraternity. In fact, I made some changes to the Wesley volume 1, but they were minor changes that I made to that volume because I said I wouldn't try to tamper with the work Dr. Wesley did. And then, as I say, I tried to follow the outline, if you will, of how he wrote the history. Now, when he published the first volume of the history book, which appeared, in 1929, it was a much, I would say, easier task at that time because you did not have as many chapters in the fraternity as you have now. So whereas he was able to give the names of the charter members of the different, I can't really do that today, or it's going to become basically sort of a chronicle or something like that. I've got to take a little bit of a different approach. I try to look at the major themes, and I have basically used the presidential administrations to organize my chapters. And each president came in with a particular theme. So I use that. I remember doing the chapter on Brother Harry Johnson, who had Alpha attitude as his. And so that has been my organizing principle. And then as a historian, I have to give you some of the context for what's taking place at that time. And I've done a little more of that, I think, than Brother Wesley did in writing the history.
Absolutely. There's a tidbit for you, Brother Harris. I did not know him at the time, but Brother Harry Johnson and I attended the same high school in St. Louis.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was, when I of course, joined here at Kappa Phi Lambda in fall 19, but I guess in some ways, having gone to the same high school as one of our general presidents, he graduated in the spring of 73, and I started in the fall of 73, so we just missed each other by a few months. And then having gone to Cornell, I think it was inevitable that I would become that I would at least try to become an Alpha, and ultimately I was fortunate enough to have done so. But I got a chance to meet Harry several years ago before I became an Alpha.
Okay, well, Brother Johnson deserves a lot of credit. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is one of the major accomplishments of the fraternity, and Brother Johnson was able to see that through. It wasn't easy. I mean, I was a member of the board during the time that we were planning for and building the MLK Memorial
in this country. I had a couple more questions for you, Brother Harris. You've I know you're here in Howard County, and you're a member now of Kappa Phi Lambda. How did you come to migrate south from Ithaca to the Columbia, Maryland area?
Well, as I was thinking about retirement, I didn't want to stay in Ithaca. In a way, there were too many memories there, okay? Now, my wife passed about 4 years ago, but we had already made the decision to move here, and we had done so. One of the requirements I had was that I wanted to be in a warmer climate.
Sure. Okay,
secondly, I wanted to be somewhere where they had a good health facilities. And Johns Hopkins is one of the best in the country, not in the world. And I thought that a lot of that was going to be for me as I began to age, but it became a matter for my wife, who contracted cancer of the esophagus.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And so she had to struggle with that, if you will. We had to struggle with it. Plus, my middle daughter has MS, and we decided to move here. We live about 6 doors away. We bought a condo.
Oh, nice.
Daughter and her family, excuse me, they have a condo here. So we're about 6 doors from each other. And my wife was able to assist our daughter. She would have setbacks, let's say, with the MS, although now the medication has become so good that my daughter is able to pretty much, live comfortably with it.
Great. Really great to hear that.
But my wife developed cancer of the esophagus, passed away about 4 years ago. That's basically what brought us. And then two, Alpha's always on my mind, all right? We, as you probably know, we're probably what, about 30 miles from Baltimore, and the headquarters there in Baltimore, the Alpha headquarters, and then Howard University is about 30 miles to the south. And I still have colleagues at Howard. Our archives for the fraternity are at Howard University.
Oh, I did not know that.
And so I've been able, to, I've got the best of both worlds.
Yes.
With the headquarters in Baltimore, the archives there in Washington, D.C. And so this became an ideal place. But let me just share a little bit of a story with you.
Sure.
Initially, I was thinking maybe we would try to buy us a place near the Chesapeake Bay. We could see the water. My wife and I, we looked at property and what have you. It's very expensive living near the Chesapeake Bay. And it dawned on me, look, you don't swim, you don't fish, you don't have a boat. Why are you trying to look at the Chesapeake Bay? And so we began to look at some other areas, and I'm very pleased living here in Fulton County. I mean, Fulton, Maryland, Howard County.
Yes, it's a great place, and happy to say, as we know, that the county executive is our brother Calvin Ball.
Oh, but we got work to do, my brother. We got work to do. I know. See the ads they're running against him. Yes. He's been endorsed by the governor, and so I think we really have work to do. Now, we have another situation with a brother who's running for governor, who I think...
Brother Wes Moore.
Yeah, the only thing, we can't fall asleep.
That's exactly right.
He's so far in the lead that there are a lot of people who assume he's a shoo-in. But if we fall asleep, we don't get out to vote, we don't get people out to vote, although Brother Moore he's a very outstanding young man. I've met him on several occasions, and I think he would make a spectacular governor for the state of Maryland. But I get a sense, and I try to keep my ears to the ground. I go to the barber shop. I don't speak as much. I listen. Brothers are talking about. And I think many of them think, it's almost like there's no way he can lose. Yes, there is a way he can. There is a way.
That's right. If we don't vote, he can lose. Right. Yeah. One last question for you, Brother Harris. As we both know, our fraternity has been around since 1906. Why do you think it's still relevant and important today?
Okay, I was thinking about this, and there's a statement that Jewel Henry Arthur Callis made in 1958. said, we were serious young men, distraught by the problems of our period. We were dedicated to the extension of the privilege of education for all. And that's something, and especially here in Howard County with the Alpha Achievers program, we've been committed to education. We were dedicated to the struggle for the inalienable rights of all men in all societies, to the building of leadership of the oppressed that should place service before self. And so to me, that is as significant, as relevant today as it was in 1906. And that's one of the things that I think distinguishes us from other members of the Divine Nine. We started out being committed to trying to solve the problems confronting people of African ancestry during the day. There are other organizations, and they do the best they can under the circumstances, who are committed to service to their brothers achieving. But we started out after the Niagara movement in 1905. And so we've got that heritage. We have been involved in trying to open up opportunity for all African Americans. The first case that Brother Charles Hamilton Houston and Brother Thurgood Marshall, the first case that they were involved in was to help a young man by the name of Donald Murray to go to law school in Maryland. Now, we helped Donald Murray. We paid for his tuition. We bought his books. Donald Murray became a Kappa.
Oh boy, did not know that.
It didn't bother us. There was another case, Elmer Henderson versus the Southern Railroad Company. That case that was taken up by the fraternity. And at the time, and we knew it at the time, that Elmer Henderson was a Kappa. But we still pursued the case because it was to lay a groundwork for desegregation and would benefit all of us. So we were not sectarian in that sense. We were looking at opportunities for all people of African ancestry.
Absolutely. The phrase servants of all comes to mind. Yeah, absolutely. Brother Harris, it has been an absolute pleasure to interview you for our oral history project. I have great admiration for you and the work that you do, and I'm doing all I can to follow in your footsteps at this very, very local level. But it's a pleasure to see you again, sir, and I look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
Very good, and I'm glad that you've taken this time for an interview because Brother Milton Carver Davis, past General President, and I, we work very closely together. We're working right now on a documentary of the 50th anniversary convention that was held in Buffalo, New York.
Nice.
And so he keeps telling me, you know, we've interviewed a number of individuals. We haven't interviewed you yet.
Well, I'll be happy to share this interview.
This is my first extensive interview that I've given.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
You're probably usually doing the interviewing.
Right. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'm honored to have provided this first interview, and I'm happy to provide a copy of this to anyone that you think should have it.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
All right.
And although I wish it was different circumstances, but I'll see you Sunday at the Omega service.
I appreciate that, brother. I look forward to seeing you there as well.
Very good.
Okay. Have a good night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.